How's it going? I'm James. In this video, I wanted to go through a comparison of the XTEINK X4 eReader and the M5 Paper S3, which are, I think, the only two e-ink devices that are in this size range currently. I've had the Paper S3 for probably about 8 months and maybe even a year, but at the time when I bought it, I wanted it to be an e-reader, but there was no really good e-reader software that was available for it. It's much more of kind of a hacking device, and there's a lot of information on the back here that can be used by folks that want to use it as a display for different, prototyping or things like that. It can be used as an updatable display. Basically, it's got an ESP32 processor inside. ESP32S3R8 is the actual nomenclature here, but it's much more of kind of a portable e-ink display that could be used in projects. But the price point at the time, like if you compare the X4, if you were to buy it off their website, they're asking, I think currently $69 for this. That's not including shipping. And then if you go to the M5 website, the S3 actually is out of stock right now, but it's available in other places. So I've never ordered anything from Electromaker, but they're offering it for $59 with free shipping within the US. I think there are other marketplaces globally that it can be picked up as well. I've seen the prices range everywhere from $79 in US dollars. $59 is about the least expensive I've seen it. But like I talked about in the last video, and I also went into, I probably spent a little bit too much time on how deceptive AliExpress can be, but it frustrates me, and I don't want people to have run into the same mistakes that I have. This one I picked up for $47, I want to say, and it seems to range between $47 and I've seen it go upwards, about $10 price range between $57 and $47 for the X4. So as you can see, they're very similar in size. Weight-wise, we could get the actual spec here, but to me, they feel very similar. The S3 is just a little bit longer. Neither of these were going to fit on the back of my iPhone, which this one, the X4, is really marketed as being able to fit on the back of a large phone. They both have magnetic backers on them, so they could be attached to something like, for a while I had this set up, the S3 set up as a display on my fridge that was showing stats from around the house, and that was kind of neat. So they're pretty similar devices. I think the choice is really going to be in pricing and how active the communities are that are developing things for this, and that's what I wanted to touch on a little bit. If folks haven't seen it, or there are some videos about the S3 that are out there. They're not really aimed at it being an e-reader from what I've seen, but to get an idea. So there's an SD card slot, and otherwise it's pretty clean. You can see that the screen is mostly flush. There's a little bit of a lip here that could pick up lint and things like that in your pocket. But I've dropped this thing several times, and sorry, I'm losing. There we go. There's one button, and then the capacitive screen, and it's also got this handle on it, and this can be removed. There's some different cases that people have made on Thingiverse and MakerWorld that you could print out, a case for it if you wanted. And one of the things I thought was kind of funny is the screws here, like if you take this thing off and then try to screw a case back onto it, make sure you don't use the same screws that came with it, because they will crack the screen. There we go. But I think this is a really clean device. They're both USB-C, which I like a lot. This one is just, while there's still some hacking that's involved in putting different kinds of software in the X4, it's not nearly as complicated as it can be to work with the Arduino programming interfaces that are used to program the S3. Also, as I'll show you, the interface isn't quite as nice yet, but I've seen some rumors about maybe being able to cross-load the new Crosspoint software for the X4 onto the S3. And if that was the case, I mean, this would be really awesome. So since my last video, I was able to install Crosspoint on this one. Some things to update on. Somebody helpfully let me know that this little hole here, which I should have remembered from when I was charging it, is actually an indicator for the charge light. It's not a microphone. Just kind of looking at it, like let's go and start it up and go to text. And I think a lot of this is really going to be, you can see how long this is going to take to load. Let's go ahead and, so you can see the X4 is just instantaneous as far as going right to the text. To my reading, the screen on the X4 is clearer. I think it's more designed. They have different brand names, so it's hard to really compare the types. Well, I'll dig that up here in just a second from the website, but I would say to me the X4 is sharper, while interestingly the S3 has a slightly higher PPI. Now, what's nice about the S3 is we can just tap to go through pages, and you can see it once it has the book loaded, it changes pages really fast. And then if we're going to go back to the library, so let's go back to library. Whoops. Go all the way back. It's a bit slow when it's loading that interface. I think that's mainly going to be software related, so that's a thing that could get improved over time. So we'll give it a second here. Whenever somebody else is watching you do something, it always seems much longer than it usually is, but neither of these are fast devices, really. You can see, so these are EPUBs. I still haven't quite figured out if I'm embedding the covers correctly for them to get added, but it's the same sort of process as adding books to the X4. You're just going to, copy them over to an SD card. I will say with the S3, you can mount the SD card, just by plugging the device in using the USB-C. So that's a little more convenient than having to pull the card out of the X4 and then cross-load into that. So I don't have very many books on here currently. Yeah. So just touching on a few other of the specs. So let's go back to the browser here. Make sure I'm not missing anything. So capacitive touchscreen. They're calling it an EPD, electronic paper display. I don't quite know how it's different than the e-ink display that's on the X4. Like I mentioned, SR8, the ESP32 SR8 module, 240 megahertz. It has 16 megs of onboard flash, which is different than the X4. With the X4, you can flash it with different operating systems, like I've done with Crosspoint, but you can't really access that as far as like storing files in it or anything like that. I actually haven't tried to do that on the S3. I really just copy everything over to the SD card and work off that. One major difference is that the S3 has an 1800 milliamp battery, whereas I want to say the X4 is only like 800. When they say 32 gigs, that's the SD card. 650 actually, so significantly larger battery. I haven't noticed, well, the amount that I've been using them, I really noticed no issue with the battery on the X4. It's as far as you change a page, it changes the screen state, it just stays there. So it's not like it's actively using the CPU or the screen to do much of anything. And same thing with the S3, like it will load a screen and it just stays there. Like I'll set it down and come back hours later and it's got the same screen on it. It doesn't really even go to sleep unless I press the power button, and then it will go back to the sleep screen. But otherwise it just stays there with the page loaded. So the S3 also has some sensors built in, and this really gets to, being able to use it as a kind of a hacking device. I have not gotten into a lot of those features. Whoops, can we go all the way back? It might have gone to sleep. So let's wake it up. There it is. It's going to reload the library. So that's one thing that the X4 is not going to do. And then we tap in the center of the screen, and this is all, you know, how the software works, but it does have some settings here within this eReader software that I loaded onto it, but we'll go back to the library. Settings wise, at least for this software, there's not a lot that you can do with it, but I was surprised that even when I went back and I saw that now that Crosspoint existed for the X4, you know, when I checked on the S3 again, there were two different options actually of eReader OSs that were available for it. So I'd be very excited if it, you know, got more. The adoption on the X4 is probably going to be, there'll probably be just more options with the X4. It really seems like there's a lot more energy around this device. So I think as the community, you know, learns more, it'll be interesting to see what might become available, and if they can share, you know, software trees, then that could lead to more interesting things. So that, yeah, I think, you know, comparison wise, if we match them up like this, you can see, you know, the screens are going to be, I mean, the S3 is noticeably got a lot, like more screen real estate, but how much that really matters when it comes to, you know, I'm going to go back to whoops. There we go. I will say that touchscreen is nice rather than, like, one of the cool things about the Crosspoint software is that you can adjust what all the different buttons do, which is a thing you can do on the stock software, but it's more capable with Crosspoint. But because that changes with kind of, you can update all that, I still find myself like forgetting which button does what. so that's just a thing to get used to, but it's very fast. And so that is great. This one, like, I don't think it's got any kind of waterproofing rating or anything like that. It's only got the one USB port, but that could be a concern since you don't have the same, you know, spaces where water could get into it as far as the buttons are concerned. I haven't seen anything about any sort of waterproof rating, so I wouldn't really say that, you know, would not call it waterproof or water resistant in any way. So like here, just going within a book, like you can see, it's just noticeably slower. And if you're coming to this device wanting kind of a slower experience, you know, I think that would probably be fine for you. Text formatting, that's going to be all software based, you know, I think. Like the Crosspoint still doesn't do text formatting great, which could also be my problem with not digging into the settings properly, because there have been some other, I think it was the Minimal OS that I installed on it, which did do better software formatting, but didn't have some other things that I preferred that was in Crosspoint, the way Crosspoint worked. And so far, at least the program I've been using on the S3 does not really have formatting. It does paragraphs, but like this book in particular, like, okay, we're on the copyright page right now, but so there's weird formatting there. But you can see it's basically only doing paragraphs. It's not doing the weird hyphenation that the X4's stock software does. I would say that as far as a reading experience goes, I probably had the worst experience with the X4's stock software, but that's just gonna be a matter of choice, I think. When it comes to loading software between the two of them, for most people, I think it's going to be easier to work with the X4. Let's go to, so, well, for the S3, since I have this page up, depending on if you're on Mac or Linux or Windows, you'll use a program called M5 Burner, which basically you need to, same thing as the X4, you put the S3 in kind of a reset state, and then this software can see it. Once you can do that, you can basically just search for anything PaperS3. It'll bring up all the different bits of software that people have designed. I mean, one thing to remember is that people are making this stuff out of the goodness of their heart. So I really appreciate that these things even exist, but some of them are going to be buggy. And that's just a thing to, think about. They also like how much they're being updated, things like that. But this is what you'll use to load software onto the S3. It's not quite, well, I'm just going to say it's not as easy as the X4. Whereas if we go to, let's see, this website for the X4, which is amazing, and I'll link to it in the show notes as well. This is where like basically people have come together from the Reddit community around the X4 to share information, OSs, like just basically have a central repository for this device. And this right here, I think would probably, as a starter device, I would say the X4 just has so much better, community support in this way. But if you want to load a different, let's see, oh, there's the menu there. If you want to load a different software on it, so you would go to firmware, which people might not grasp right away that that's what the OS is called on the X4 is firmware. So from here you can go, let's see, flash via web. And this could also be a little confusing. Like you might see view on GitHub and think, okay, I can go download the software. And you can do that. There are tools you can use to flash it over. But flash via web is going to be the easiest way to do it. It takes you to the site xteink.dve.al. And again, this is a community-produced website, so people are making this out of the kindness of their hearts. It also does not work well in Firefox, which is what I've got this loaded up in Firefox right now. You'll need to use Chrome if you're going to do that. And if you've done anything with ESP32 devices, you've probably already dealt with this. But you need, like Chrome has the interface to be able to see it as a serial device. And so you'll put it in the kind of reset state, which is you hold down on the X4, you hold down the reset button, press the power button, and it doesn't really give you any indicator that's in that state. But then once you plug it into your machine and go ahead and choose like what you want to load, yeah, it's actually not going to work here because I'm using Firefox, but it would load up a little, like pop up a little pop-up screen, and you'll see your device and you can choose it. And once you do that, it connects to the device and, boop, 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 it copies it over. It's very easy. There's very little concern, I think, about, like, you really can't brick the device from what I've heard. Like you can always, they make the manufacturer firmware available. There's currently no worry about, if it does freeze during a flash, or Crosspoint gives you the ability to update actually over Wi-Fi. And some people had mentioned that they've had some crashes doing that. You can always plug it in, reflash the manufacturer firmware in either Chinese or English, and then go back to Crosspoint if you want to do that. And Crosspoint is pretty great. Like if you haven't checked it out yet, I would definitely take a look at that. But check out this just readme.club because it's got a ton of resources. The S3 is going to be like, you do the same thing, but through a piece of software you have to install on your machine. You need to navigate it. The M5 software is trying to serve like all of the M5 devices, which they make a lot of cool stuff, but you just have to search through more interfaces. Whereas, for the X4, this is directed just solely at that device. So let's see, wrong screen. There we go. Thickness wise, that's another thing to take a look at. The X4 is slightly thinner. It's also got, like an aluminum alloy metal, same rounded corners. So that's not a huge concern, but as far as going on the back of a phone, it's going to be a little more svelte that way. But yeah, I think reading experience, like I said, I would probably go with the X4 currently, but I can see the software experience getting better on the S3. And if I wanted just a more capable device that can do more things, I mean, it's got a gyroscope. It's got, like, you can basically cut out and find the leads on the back. Like that's what all these little things indicate here. And it's cool. Like if you feel it, you can feel the indentation where, okay, I could cut that open and get at the interface inside. Otherwise it's, it's hidden and you could just carry this like a device. So there's a lot of capability with the S3, which for the price is amazing. Like if you don't have one and you like to tinker with gadgets, I would absolutely recommend getting one of these while they're still available, because they, since they're out of stock on the M5 website, it makes me wonder if they're coming up with a new version, or if they're not going to keep making these. I would need to dig into that some more. But it's just a super cool device as far as doing other things with it, like as a dashboard or having a touch screen that you can, I've seen people have done things with like home hub networks and, other like controlling robots and stuff like that with it, which is super cool. I mean, it's also a Wi-Fi device, and it only has Wi-Fi. It does not have Bluetooth. So, but you can still do things through that. So that's all very cool. So yeah, if there are any other questions or things that I didn't touch on with this, please let me know in the comments and I can answer your questions. But I mean, I'm glad I own both devices. I think if the X4 had existed, before I bought the S3, I mean, I like to tinker with stuff, and if I had the money, I probably would still get these. I think they're super cool. And the way that gadgets are currently, like, it kind of feels like if you can get hold of a thing, you should get it while you can. So yeah, let me know if you have other questions, and I will do my best to answer. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you later.